Welcome to the LetterStack podcast. I am Renga and I run letterstack.co, the one-stop shop where any creator or brand could understand how to run, grow, and build a newsletter business. And who better to learn it from than these newsletter creators who have hit it big and been able to run a successful newsletter business, and they would be happy to share their secrets with you. We are going to share with you one such newsletter creator. Guest number one, Sebastian Lindner. Sebastian ran Web3 Daily, a daily newsletter on the state of crypto and Web3. And they recently sold to the Milk Road, which is one of the biggest newsletters you must have heard about. But before we get into that, we're going to hear from Seb himself. And I want to make sure that you understand that this is one half of a wonderful duo, I would say, who ran Web3 Daily. Seb, along with Chevy, actually ran the Web3 Daily newsletter, which was a daily occurrence. So we're going to understand how they went through it, the grind about growing it, building it, and writing daily. That's quite a feat in itself. So let's get right into it. Talk to Seb. Seb, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Sure. And Seb, before we get into the nitty-gritties and we talk about the makings of Web3 Daily, I would like for our viewers to get to know some quick facts about Web3 Daily. So would you mind talking about your daily newsletter, or rather your last newsletter subscriber count before you went over to Milk Road?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started Web3 Daily in, I think we posted a few sort of test publications in February 2022. We posted our very first public publication on the 1st of March of 2022. We ended up running that for about 2.5 years before we got acquired by Milk Road, as you say. When we got acquired, we had about 55, I think just a bit over 55,000 subscribers.
Wow.
We had a pretty good average open rate. I think it was a little bit over 42%. So, it wasn't amazing, but it was definitely higher than the average. And we had a really
shot.
Well, we had a really engaged audience. So in other words, every single day when we would send out a newsletter, we would get tens or maybe occasionally hundreds of responses of people, either interacting, clicking with our article, certainly clicking on the articles. We'd probably get thousands of those per day, but people responding, commenting with their thoughts, their ideas, interesting, cool things that we should check out. So it was a super cool experience. It was a great business to start and run and scale, and ultimately we sold it too, which is really cool.
Yeah, so let's hear all about it. Let's start from the very beginning. Could you describe how you and Chevy met? How did you come about this idea?
Yeah, so Chevy and I have a funny story in that we are both from Australia originally, from Melbourne.
No kidding.
Yeah, but we both live in the US now.
Awesome.
And we've actually known each other for, over 20 years.
Wow.
And we met because our mums are both actually friends. So sort of like family friends.
Awesome.
And we knew each other, we kind of met each other when we were young kids, but we didn't really kind of get to know each other at all until we were in our sort of mid-20s or early to mid-20s. I had a previous company, which I built and ran, and I actually sold that as well just before moving over to the US in 2019. And that was a short stays accommodation company. So it was nothing to do with crypto, not even really to do with tech. But it was a good company. And Chevy had, Chevy had an e-commerce company. So he was, I rode the coattails of the exponential growth of Airbnb. Chevy rode the coattails of the exponential growth of the drop shipping sort of boom and the amazing cycle around that sort of stuff and Facebook marketing. And he was really, really amazing at growth marketing, Facebook marketing. No, he still is.
Awesome.
So we ended up, when we were both living in Melbourne, we would catch up all the time and just talk about, business ideas and things that we had learned and things we'd listened to on different podcasts and all sorts of different things like that. And this is actually the sixth company. Web3 Daily was the sixth startup that I've started. Most of them have not gone that well.
Right.
But, two of them, this was the second one, which has gone pretty well and, ultimately sold it. But the background of Web3 Daily and how we actually, and why we started the newsletter is that I had a previous company, which I started in 2020, ran that for about a year and a half or so.
Right in the middle of COVID? Or?
Yeah, pretty much started about the start of COVID.
Okay.
So, I saw that there was this clear trend of people, working from home and consuming a lot more digital content, really. And so I came up with this idea to work with creators and people who already had an audience, mostly sort of on Instagram or, to some extent TikTok or YouTube, a lot of YouTubers that we worked with the idea that the thesis that if we can help them monetize just 1% of their existing audience, the numbers make a ton of sense.
Absolutely.
And so, we're working with creators who had 400,000, 600,000, maybe 1 million followers across different platforms. So it's quite a lot of subscribers or followers, not newsletter. We didn't work with anyone with newsletters, but they all had YouTube channels and Instagram and things. And anyway, worked on this company for about a year and a half. I actually raised a small amount of funding, an angel round of investment for that business. And we were able to hire Chevy as our content writer, as our growth marketer, as someone who could help us with the sales side of things. Cut a very long story short, that business actually didn't work out very well because what we realized was that people who were getting free content for years and years, and they'd followed these creators for free, didn't really get excited about paying for content. Even if the content that we created, we basically created these courses, these really high quality courses, but they didn't sell very well. So, our estimate was 1% of audience we would convert into paying. We ended up converting about 0.1 or 0.2% of an audience into paying customers. So after working with a couple of creators, we decided not to go ahead with that particular company. But one absolutely wonderful thing came out of building that company, which was that Chevy and I realized we can work together. And in fact, we love working together. We're just a great team. We kind of have very complementary skills. I was really focused on the business development side of things. Chevy's really focused on the marketing side of things. And I would say we're both focused on the product/content side of things, although Chevy is a much better copywriter than I am, I would say. But in any case, I have a background in working as a product manager. So I have a particular interest and I would say unique skill set in talking to customers, talking to real users, understanding sort of what people want and pain points and all those sorts of things. So we're just a really good team. We decided after, honestly banging our head against the wall for like a year and a half, trying to make this previous company work, we decided to change direction entirely. And we thought, both Chevy and I are not bad at copywriting. I mean, he was really good at writing. I was not bad at writing. We both, actually we were looking at our Slack, we had all these different channels, marketing and business development and product and all these different things. And we had this one random channel, which was just like Web3. And we looked at our Slack messages and there was like a team of 4 or 5 people who I worked on in the previous company. And just that Web3 channel was just crazy all the time. Everyone was excited about like the things that are happening in the crypto space.
World. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like the marketing channel was like crickets, there's nothing going on. The sales channel, but the Web3 channel and crypto channel, there's always interesting, exciting new things that we wanted to talk about and chat to each other about. So we're like, all right, we have a passion in this space. We like the idea of, building a newsletter. And the really important thing and the big insight from the previous company was that instead of building an audience and instead of just building a product and then trying to find an audience to sell it to, what we wanted to do with Web3 Daily was build an audience and then figure out what products they would ultimately want to buy, or what products, would be valuable to them in the future. So we basically built our audience and we decided to focus on starting Web3 Daily, and I guess the rest is history.
Yeah, and you touch upon a very good point with the Web3 channel, lighting up like a Christmas tree as compared to the other channels, which is pretty much the state of the world today in Web3 too, in 2024. But even if you think about Web3 in general, going around, the industry or the niche in which you were focusing on was not very inclusionary to speak of. Like people don't really understand what stable coins are, what does HODL mean. I mean, you and I, we probably speak the language, but a lot of people feel alienated because there's not a lot of education going around. Was that kind of a good draw for you folks to step into for that matter?
Yeah, you sort of hit the nail on the head in that. So we had this idea that language seems to be a big barrier. So we truly believe in blockchain technology, especially the crypto space, like the crypto use case for blockchain. I think NFTs and smart contracts and things are very interesting, but I really believe in the crypto use case. And we believe long term, not like tomorrow or next week or in a month, but like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years and beyond, I really do think that it has the crypto space will have a massive impact, or continue to have a huge impact on the financial system. But so because of that fundamental belief, we thought that it's important for people to actually understand the space. And we thought that a lot of people sort of got scared of the space and decided not to jump in, literally because they didn't understand language around it. So, as soon as you start talking about a wallet or a protocol or, NFTs, like what is that? Like just like random letters, people don't understand like what that actually means. And so we thought
the scams were not helping, I guess.
Well, exactly. Then you've got that, it just compounds. So you've got this kind of interesting different language, and then you've got the media and a lot of familiar people, Instagram celebrities and stuff, going to court for promoting these scams and whatever.
Right.
And it's not a really a helpful and productive I guess way for people to start understanding the crypto space, or it's not very positive for the industry itself. But we sort of could see through those in that the fundamental, like the underlying technology is extremely valuable. It's really about and the more people that actually have a better understanding, we thought the less people that will actually get caught up in these scams. And so we decided to use Web3 Daily, where you can go back and look at our whole sort of past catalog of all of our articles and everything, they're still available. But we would use a lot of...
I've been an early adopter of Web3 Daily from probably the first days. Yeah,
I know, from probably a couple of months in, maybe 2 or 3 months in, like you were very, very early subscriber, so thank you. But yeah, we would use a lot of analogies, examples, and things that people already understood. So instead of, explaining protocol or like, layers, like layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, in like vague terms, we would use something like the iPhone and, the actual phone itself being like a layer 1, the App Store being like a layer 2, and then apps being a layer 3, essentially. And so, we would use examples that people already understood to explain these supposedly complex concepts in plain English and using language that everyone understands.
That's amazing. And I've been, like I said, I've been reading it through the early days. It was a refreshing breath of fresh air beyond all the crypto language, jargon heavy newsletters that I used
That was
to
the
get.
other thing.
That was the other thing. And they probably appeal to a different target audience, which has been in the ecosystem, understands the language going ahead. But tell me this. So you and Chevy decide, okay, there's a huge white space in educating and bringing non-believers into the crypto ecosystem. And you decide to start writing about it. But wasn't writing daily like a grind? I mean, how did you folks manage to stay consistent and stay, motivated to put out content daily?
Yeah, so it wasn't that much of a grind in that like we were excited about it every single day. And I love reading, Milk Road now and just, other media outlets. I just find the space just fascinating, and I love reading about the innovations that are happening in the space, as well as sort of, making my own predictions about the market and seeing how that, is accurate or inaccurate based on what happens in the world, big world
Which
events.
Milk Road does that now too with its, I think the meter or barometer of
exactly,
how the market is
exactly.
behaving,
But so that's sort of like the very short answer. But the much longer and probably honestly more helpful answer to your audience is that through all of our previous businesses, and especially my Airbnb business, which I ran it for about 5 years, the most important thing, and something that I realized very, very early, was the power and value of systems and processes. So we developed a system that would allow us to produce really high quality content pretty quickly, and certainly very frequently. I mean, literally, we wrote 3 original articles every single day, well, Monday to Friday. We published 3 original articles Monday to Friday, and we had a system that would allow us to sort of create high quality content quickly. We broke our every single email down into the same structure every single day. So it always had something that was cool and kind of like interesting, like a new game or something that had come out, or just something interesting. Then we had the important article, which was, there's usually 1 or 2 top stories per day. In the crypto space, things move very, very quickly. So, sometimes it's a super positive thing, like a Bitcoin ETF being approved. Sometimes it's a super negative thing, like,
the SEC shutting down.
Exactly. Alameda research and FTX, or SEC, some news. But either way, there is always like some important thing. And then we would have an advertisement, which I'll talk about in a second. And then the 4th article was which was our 3rd original article, was called Educate. So it was some interesting story that we could write about where we could teach our audience about some area of crypto. So it might have been like, ZK rollups or something like that, which probably doesn't mean a lot to most people, but we could explain, that this company is using them in this particular way. And now, even though ZK rollups means basically nothing, you could see the application of it and hopefully get a better understanding. And over time, if you read our newsletter for 6 months or 12 months, you really will understand these weird sounding terms and and hopefully get excited about the space.
Yeah, I tell you this because I always look forward to the term definitions in your way, because I always thought about, okay, how are you going to show me stable coins and talk about it in a way that I should probably understand, even if I were not in crypto or I did not invest. And those used to be really hilarious. I look forward to the daily newsletter, but you and Chevy make it look like a cakewalk. I'm sure that in spite of you being motivated and you having a great system or SOPs in place, it must have seemed like quite a bit of work, because you're not writing, you're also launching and publishing it and sending it out to these 10,000 subscribers and more.
Yeah.
So did you eventually was it just the two of you, or did you have a team for research or for assets?
So it was really, really cool. One of the amazing things about building an audience first company, which is pretty much every newsletter type of business. I guess some companies have, the company first and then they build the newsletter, but we went the other way around. Something which is really cool is that people sort of feel like they know you. And because they feel like they know you, they feel like they are able to email you just out of the blue, like cold email. And it's easy to do. You just literally press reply, which is cool. I was grateful for that. Most of the feedback that we got was super positive and exciting. Some of it was a bit critical and honestly constructive. But the really cool thing was that we had a ton of people. I mean, probably, it was maybe 1 or 2 a month at a minimum, and in certain times significantly more than that, reaching out to us being like, hey, I love what you guys do. Like, can I work for you? Can I
Awesome.
can I please write articles for you? Can I please help with your business development? Can I please help with research or some other product or whatever that we have going on?
Yeah.
So we worked with, I would almost always jump on a call with someone if they responded to an email and they said, we love what you guys are doing and I'd love to work with you or contribute in some way, help manage your social media or something like that. I'd almost always jump on a call with them. And then we would have like a 30 to 60 minute conversation. I'd just get a feeling for who they are and what type of person they are. And then I most of the time I would add them to our sort of internal Slack group. So we had a Slack channel which had maybe about 15 or 16 people in the end of just random readers who had, got in touch with
friends
me.
of Web3 Daily kind of thing.
Yeah, like really, like exactly. I was like the inner circle. And it was really cool because we would be able to throw out ideas and be like, hey, we're thinking about launching this random like course type thing, or what do you think, like how would you feel if we worked with this company as a sponsor? And we'd get like some really, really like honest feedback as opposed to, having to go out to 50,000 people and asking them. We would just go to 15 people. So anyway, we ended up working with the team in the end was myself doing mostly focused on business development, Chevy mostly focused on growth marketing, so getting more subscribers, and he was the head of content. We had an amazing writer, and we went through a couple of different writers, but we had one, she was a contractor and she was absolutely great. And then we ended up having a social media manager who was also amazing. He was based out of India, but he was just so good. He worked like around the clock. He was just constantly online.
Sounds like me though. Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. So I don't know what time zone you guys work in, but he was just so awesome. And then and then we also had some sales guys. We had two sales guys who were also contractors, and they helped us a lot from the business development side of things.
That's amazing. And we're going to break down the next couple of questions into your role and how did sponsors or collaborators reach out to you from the enterprise side of things to get sponsorships, collabs, whichever might be the case. And then let's also try to break down how did you and Chevy end up talking about marketing? How did you grow it to 55,000 subscribers like you described? So let's take the first part. How did sponsorships come about? Did they come right away, or did they did it take a time to come?
So we had an interesting situation. The crypto space, what I didn't realize and what I didn't foresee, but it worked out okay for us in the end, was that building a crypto newsletter essentially means that you are betting on the market. And our newsletter was entirely tied, like the revenue was basically tied to the market. So in other words, we launched our newsletter in March of 2022. By May 2022, we had like 6,000 subscribers and Luna crashed. By September, October, FTX crashed. We had about 14,500 subscribers. FTX crashed. And at that point, we kind of had like a pivotal decision. It was, do we keep going and just keep powering through, or do we change tact? I mean, we've only done, 6 or 7 or 8 months or something worth of work at that point. So it wasn't a huge loss. But we really, it came down to a couple of things. Firstly, we believed in what we were doing. Secondly, we loved doing it. And thirdly, even though the market seemed to have sort of crashed, it did crash, we still had the mindset that the crypto space as a whole, as an industry, would continue to grow exponentially over the next sort of probably 10 or 20 years. And I'm not sure if we had planned to continue to work on the newsletter for 10 or 20 years, but we could have. And and either way, we really truly believed that the industry would bounce back.
Right.
I say this because even when we only had 6,000 subscribers, before the Luna crash, we started getting like reach out, like inbound requests from companies asking to sponsor our newsletter.
Wow.
So that was really, really cool. And then I kind of tried to figure out the strategy and the system that I could put into place to start doing a lot more sort of outbound, like outreach to different companies.
Right.
And then when FTX crashed, it actually didn't impact things immediately. It actually it had about a 4 to 6 month lag. We were still getting quite a lot of sponsorships over, the end of that year, 2022.
And would this be, sorry to interrupt you, but would this be the protocol companies, or are these the exchanges coming through?
Yeah, all sorts of different companies. We basically tried to work with companies that had some sort of relevance either to Web3 or to the finance industry. It could be traditional finance, because a lot of our readers, a lot of our audience was interested in investing and personal finance and traditional finance, but they were obviously also interested in the blockchain space, in Web3. So we had some games, we had protocols, we had we had pretty strict requirements around who we would and wouldn't work with, because we definitely didn't want to work with any sort of like, pump and dump schemes or like NFT projects that would just literally like steal everyone's money. And I'm very happy to say that we actually never ever did. Never once. I think every single company that we've worked with is still in business, which is great. And the bigger the companies, the better, sort of in general. And we ended up working with some really, really cool companies. There was, Mythical Games is a big Web3 gaming company. They were awesome. We worked with TechCrunch for their crypto sessions. We worked with Consensus and a bunch of the crypto conferences and conventions. That was cool. Bunch of protocols, all sorts of stuff. But I want to say 2 super important things. Number one, and this is probably like one of the biggest insights that I could ever give to any newsletter builder, anyone who's even interested in building a newsletter, is that while building, figuring out how to get subscribers is helpful. Figuring out how to get sponsors is helpful, and that'll keep things going. If you don't have a great product, like if the writing part itself is not interesting, nothing else matters. Literally nothing else matters. So, it'll either become too expensive to acquire subscribers because you'll get so much churn, you'll get so many unsubscribes, or you won't get repeat customers in terms of companies paying for ad space, and that just becomes it's impossible to run a business if you don't have at least some portion of the companies you work with being repeat customers.
Right.
And so the other thing, that was the first point, which is like, honestly, the most important insight, like the product is everything. Like you have to have a good product as a baseline. That's table stakes.
Right.
And the second thing I was going to say is that from a business development perspective, you should have some sort of like target audience or some sort of group of companies that you decide that you will work with, and a group of companies that you decide you won't work with. We made the decision very, very early on that the crypto space in itself might be tainted by, you know, people like Sam Bankman-Fried and the FTX space and whatever. But we as a company were not going to be. You know, we had a high reputation and we would only work with companies who had held themselves to an equally high reputation and standard. Exactly. And so, so that was very, very, very important for us. And we said no to a lot of companies. Plenty of companies wanted to advertise with us and wanted to give us, you know, $10 or $20 or $1,000. And we were like, I'm sorry, like I would love to take the money, but it totally goes against we can't promote, you know, a random NFT project that we have never ever heard of. The Twitter account was created, you know, 2 weeks ago, and like, what are the chances this is a long-term project? Basically none. So I think that was really important for us and our growth. It worked out well for us in the end.
That's amazing, because I tell you this because we come across several newsletters which is usually content shilling, content shilling again. And it's tough to make a business, especially when you are less than 10,000 subscribers. I get it. You know, it gets to you to get to that 10,000 subscriber mark, and probably after that it gets easier. Maybe but until you get there, any source of income is going to be great. And especially in the crypto ecosystem,
true.
It's hard to trust people because all of them seem trustworthy until they turn out otherwise. And it's a short span of time to actually build the trust too. And I totally get, you know, when you said that you probably turned away more than you really accepted. So that's great to know. And let's come back to the writing part that you talked about. The writing is key, and being able to distribute that writing. Of course, newsletters are a great source. And by the way, which network were you folks on? Were you on Beehive?
Yeah, we started on ConvertKit and then we moved over to Beehive about a year before we sold.
Any specific reasons there, Seb?
Yeah, we you know, I had the belief that Beehive I don't think existed. It might have like just launched when we started our newsletter. So I didn't want to bet on a company that had just launched. I mean, it was ultimately our platform, right? It's like the thing that if it went away, I mean, that would have a fatal impact on our company. And so we started with ConvertKit, which was tried and tested, and you know, they accepted crypto newsletters because there were some platforms out there that didn't.
Understandably.
And yeah, exactly. And I loved the idea that ConvertKit had, you know, grown, like been somewhat bootstrapped, like mostly bootstrapped, or they hadn't gone down the venture fund. You know, they might have taken angel investors, but they hadn't gone down the venture capital path. And anyway, so we started with ConvertKit, and honestly, it's a pretty good platform. And we had really high average open rate. We had a much higher average open rate on ConvertKit than we did when we moved over to Beehive. I don't know if that's because of the deliverability or if that's because of how ConvertKit, you know, what they called opened compared to what Beehive called opened. Like there's a lot of like black box things which are not very clear. But
We're going to talk
ultimately,
about those in a separate episode with an expert
okay.
too. So,
Oh, cool.
So that's
Yeah,
great.
that's perfect. That would be a really interesting episode.
I know.
But the Beehive side of things, so we moved over mostly because of the analytics that they provided. And they were able to provide much more valuable analytics for us. And it was also significantly cheaper. It was way cheaper on Beehive compared to ConvertKit. And over time, a year and a half into our journey, Beehive had become a lot more mature, and they offered more functionality. Interestingly, so my biggest fear in moving over to Beehive was the idea that they had taken venture capital funding, because, that is a dangerous game. In other words, I've worked with companies, startups who have taken tens of millions of dollars in venture funding, and their objective at that point is to get to $100 million, right, or even $1 billion. And they'll do everything they can to achieve that.
Scale
and so,
yeah,
exactly. And so I was a bit nervous about that, because I know over time, and this is not a slight on Beehive at all, like, good on them. If that's the game they want to play, they should continue to build. They've built an amazing product. And I'm sure that eventually the founders and the board and whoever else will get a great outcome if that's the direction they want to go. But I was nervous about that, because if they were to sell before we sold our company, right, and the purchaser was sort of like a private equity firm who didn't actually know anything about running, email
right,
software or anything like that, it could have really, really impacted us, like could have impacted our deliverability, could have impacted just our business as a whole. And so I was a bit tentative to move over to Beehive, but ultimately that, the pros outweighed the cons in terms of the analytics and stuff that they provided. And also it's like a better user interface. Like there's a lot of pros to Beehive. ConvertKit was a good platform. I don't think it was a bad platform, but I would say we almost essentially outgrew it. And it was so much cheaper on Beehive. And so,
amazing. Yeah, because we are on ConvertKit. Yeah, we are on ConvertKit too. And I feel that the way, and again, this is not choosing one platform against the other, but the speed at which Beehive has been shipping
it's amazing, isn't it? It's very impressive.
It's amazing. Yeah, Tyler and his team are on fire, especially in the last few months. So yeah, but that's a good point. So let's actually get down on the path. And if you're talking about Beehive and its capabilities to promote, how did you and Chevy end up promoting and growing it to 55K? How did that look like?
Yeah, so that's a good question. This is probably the other big insight for any of your audience to take away. As I said sort of at the start of the episode, we decided to build an audience and then figure out what they wanted, and with the idea to ultimately do the same thing as the same mistake as our previous company, which was how do we monetize a free audience?
Right.
But the advantage we had was that we owned the audience, and so we ultimately could monetize their attention as opposed to them, our audience. So we did have some B2C sort of consumer products, paid products that we developed, but mostly like 90% or more of our revenue came from ad space, from selling ads, and that was B2B. So companies would purchase ad space within our newsletter. And so the interesting thing was that we had set out to build a free audience and then monetize our free audience, but we stumbled upon a better business model, which was build a free audience and then monetize their attention and sell to companies. B2B sales is generally easier or higher ticket than B2C. Certainly was in this instance. And so we, I think that we figured out our system in terms of how to sell and what the package, we played around with the packages a lot, and it's complicated because they do change and evolve. Like our list changes, the market changes, maybe our audience demographics, we'll have a focus on a particular area of the world, and then our audience demographics changes, and like different things like that can really impact your the way that you sell the ads.
Right.
But yeah, we figured it out in the end. It was really good.
Awesome. And where did you acquire most of your subscribers?
Yeah.
Was it Facebook ads? Was it?
Yeah, so we had a couple of different things. I mean, in the early days, we tried everything. We did, cross promotions. Yeah, exactly. like probably honestly, at least 20 or 30 different tactics. We did like cross promotions. We did giveaways. We did, purchasing, of course, like Facebook ads. We tried Reddit, Twitter, Quora. In fact, we tried to do like an organic growth strategy around like Reddit and Quora, where we would just like respond to every single, question about like what is a wallet or what is a whatever protocol or something like that.
Right.
And then we would just at the very bottom, like have a thing saying, oh, by the way, like we have a newsletter. So if you're interested, check out Web3 Daily. But in the end, there were sort of two main things that worked. Number one, the simplest thing ever, I mean, in terms of most straightforward and typical, is just Facebook ads. Facebook and Instagram, I mean, that Meta has so much data on people, it is unbelievable. It's crazy. Way better for us than Google ads, way better for us than Twitter or anything else. And the second thing,
what is the other channel?
Yeah, the second thing, which I can't go into too many details about, but I can tell you at a high level, was basically like a partnership that we did with a big crypto app, and we would develop like crypto specific content for them, and then they would release it to their audience, and then they would basically have like a little field where it's like, oh, by the way, like if you want to stay up to date with crypto news, sign up for Web3 Daily. And we would pay for everyone who ended up subscribing to Web3 Daily through that app. And that was amazing. That was like the biggest growth hack for us.
That's probably like an evolved form of guest content or sponsored content, as it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's similar to that, but and if we were to continue to grow, and if we were to have raised funding and stuff like that, I would have put all of our money towards these growth partnerships and tried to connect with every single crypto app that I possibly could on the App Store, and try to be their like education arm or their content arm or whatever. For free, but the catch is they have to have this little, by the way, sign up for Web3 Daily if you want to hear more. That was the best growth hack for us. But I mean, that partnership probably took about 6 months to develop. I mean, we were on calls. It was essentially like an enterprise sort of partnership, and they were sending us a lot of subscribers, and we ended up paying them quite a bit of money over a period of time, but that was our best growth hack for sure. And yeah, I mean, we were well set up in the end, which is, I think, one of the main reasons why we were interesting to Milk Road, and the guys who ended up acquiring us.
Awesome. And so let's talk about the quick timeline. So you start in March 2022. Mm-hmm. Would that be right?
Yep.
And it got sold pretty recently, I guess, August 24.
Yep.
Right. So that's, I would say, 2.5 years.
Yeah, about 2.5 years. Yep.
I would say that's exponential growth for a newsletter, considering that you
Yes.
went off the
Pretty quick.
beaten route on a niche which is again very unconventional,
True.
riddled with a lot of misinformation. So doing
Definitely.
education and doing the right thing about getting the sponsorship with the most ethical players in the space,
Right.
which is going to be hard to vet considering the changing conditions of the market. So I think that's all in all, it's quite a feat on the distribution, on the sponsorship, on the subscriber acquisition side. So it to me at least, and I'm in the newsletter space, and I feel that that's quite remarkable. But if let's say you were to start today, I know there's the ad networks on newsletters are far more evolved. There are way more,
Yeah.
I would say,
True.
formal partnerships for newsletters to collaborate and cross post from each other. So is there anything that you would want to tell our viewers on what they could do today if they were to start Web3
Yeah.
Daily themselves?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say the ad networks are amazing. I mean, definitely start out with them, and we used some ad network companies, especially in the early days, but even in the later days, whenever we had available ad space, which wasn't purchased in a flat fee model. I would say, and maybe this is a bit of a hot take, but related to the companies that you work with, not all companies are going to get the same results. So as a company, if you're looking to sponsor a newsletter, just be aware of that. For us, B2B companies actually didn't do as well as B2C companies. B2C actually ended up getting way more signups, or connect your wallet, or whatever it was, whatever the call to action ended up being. For our audience, B2C was more valuable. But for other companies, B2B they should focus all of their attention on B2B companies. So it sort of depends on your list, but I would say I would call attention to the idea that if you're a company looking to sponsor a newsletter, be aware of what you're looking to do, right? Because the really valuable thing about newsletters is that we can tell a story. So we ended up doing a minimum of 3-day ad spend, but usually people would do at least 5-day, or our best-selling package was 10-day. We also had a 20-day and larger than that. But the 10-day one was the typical one that we sold, because we could tell a story. The first 3 days was awareness. Like, what is this company? This is the very first time I'm hearing about this company. I'm not going to buy from them, but I'm interested to hear about them. And then the next 3 to 4 days was the consideration. It's like, oh, okay, I know about them. Now what can they do for me? Where's the value for me? And then the last sort of 2 to 3 days, depending, because we would do 10 days, Monday to Friday and then Monday to Friday. The last probably Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that second week would be we would have the call to action, and that's the conversion portion of the campaign. And over those 3 pieces of content, we'd be able to tell a story, and we would be able to really help our users understand who is this company, what do they stand for, why do they exist, and what can they do for me? Because in the end, that's what everyone wants to know. What can they do for me? Why should I give them my money? Why should I give them my time or my attention or anything like that? I think that you'll definitely, depending on the company, companies usually get a cheaper sort of, CPM, cost per, 1,000 subscribers or whatever, through, or signups through Facebook or Instagram. But maybe you can get a more engaged sort of user group through an email newsletter, and marketing through a newsletter. I think it really depends on the company, and for some companies, newsletter marketing is amazing, and other companies, I wouldn't even try it. So unless you find a very, very niche and valuable newsletter who has exactly the audience that you're going after.
Right. And then that's actually pretty telling because it totally depends on how saturated the niche is in getting
Right.
adjacent newsletters in the space, which probably not be competition or probably not be doing the same thing that you do. So it's always
Yeah.
going to be an exploratory phase. But I think there are way more options now than when you started, I believe, right? And
Yeah, I think so. In terms of like ad networks and stuff like that, you mean? Or
yeah, and ad networks too, for that matter, because I don't think Beehive's ad network was as evolved as we see it today.
yeah.
Compared to that. So one last thing though,
Yeah.
If now that you have probably how's your current status like? So Chevy is still working at Milk Road, I believe, as head of content.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah. So he moved over to the head of content for Milk Road, which is amazing. And he's loving it. And yeah, he gives me the updates and he's very excited to be working there, which is awesome. And there's like a significant team, maybe 14 or 15 people or something over there at the moment.
Wow.
I don't know if
Yeah.
they've grown or at this point, but they're a much bigger team than just the small, him and I, or him and I and a writer, or even with the social media guy and the salespeople, like that's still like 6 people, and so Chevy's working at Milk Road. I am no longer involved with Milk Road or Web3 Daily, obviously, in any extent. But I'm also kind of happy about that. I've got some big things happening in my personal life. So I'm about to become a dad for the first time in January. So that's super exciting, and just bought a house as well. So doing some renovations, and I got a bunch of things that I'm focusing on outside of crypto and Web3 and newsletters and all that stuff. But yeah.
I know, yeah, and congratulations on the news. I hope.
Thank you.
I hope everything works out well, and congratulations on the house as well. I guess this probably apparent downtime you might need to make sure that you're able to cherish those memories too. But despite what's coming up your way, Seb, thank you so much for sparing the time. This has been a great series of conversations, snippets, insights that we have had from Web3 Daily. And I'm glad that you actually took the time out to talk to us about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Really appreciated.
Thank you. And this concludes episode 1 of the Let Us Stack podcast. We'll get back to you with more episodes with more engaging content like these. Stay tuned.